Right now, Osama bin Laden's son-in-law has been captured. So now what? Does he belong in a civilian prison or on a military tribunal? Should he be tried in New York? Lots of questions remain as our nation prepares to face the so-called mouthpiece of Al-Qaeda. And next, Rand for president? After his epic filibuster this week, he's hinting at a possible run for the White House in 2016. But if he does, would that split the Republican Party in two? And later, do you find these posters offensive? This New York City-funded ad campaign aimed at curbing teen pregnancy, getting some criticism from unlikely places. We are going to dig into that debate. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in again tonight for Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us on this Friday evening, March the 8th. Osama bin Laden's son-in-law has been captured and brought to New York. And that's where the controversy begins. He made his first appearance in an American courtroom today, but some say he belongs in Gitmo and not in downtown Manhattan. One of Al-Qaeda's most senior leaders, Osama bin Laden's son-in-law, appeared in New York federal court today to face terror charges. Sulainman Abu Ghaith pleaded not guilty to a charge he conspired to kill Americans. In this video, Abu Ghaith, who served as Al-Qaeda's spokesman, celebrates the 9/11 attacks on the U.S. Abu Ghaith was captured in January and brought to New York City last week. According to U.S. officials, the CIA tracked his movements for years, from Afghanistan to Iran, then to Turkey, where he was arrested.
Once he left Iranian territory and got into Turkey with very close monitoring by U.S. government agencies, his days were numbered.
Abu Ghaith was transferred to Jordan, where the U.S. picked him up. He's reportedly revealed key intelligence about Al-Qaeda operations, including its current status, personnel, and finances.
This is a man who was in the inner circle of bin Laden's Al-Qaeda operations, and now we have him alive, and he's talking.
This is one of the first prosecutions of a senior Al-Qaeda leader on U.S. soil. President Obama, shortly after taking office, pledged to try terror suspects in federal court. But some lawmakers would prefer Abu Ghaith face a military tribunal at Guantanamo Bay.
We're now setting a new precedent that will come back to bite us. You're putting people like this into federal court, giving them the same constitutional rights as an American citizen.
He should be going to Gitmo. He should be kept there and questioned to make sure that we know everything that he knows.
The Obama administration says national security officials unanimously agreed to prosecute Abu Ghaith in civilian court, believing that that was in the best interest of national security. Lots to discuss on this subject, so we're going to bring in tonight's panel on this as we welcome back Joe Carvin to the panel, former Republican congressional candidate and a partner at Ultima Partners. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author, and Scott Levinson, Democratic political consultant, president of the Advance Group, and a man who once called me the snarkiest man on television. I have not forgotten about that. True. Let's start with the logistical question, just the overall. Should Abu Ghaith be tried in New York City?
Well, for me, it's not just a question of where. What it starts with is how you treat him and whether he's a civilian or an armed combatant. If we don't understand we have a war against terrorism at this point in our nation's development, I don't know why we continue to go down the denial road. We're in a war against terrorism. These are armed combatants, and they need to be treated like armed combatants. This is a military issue.
Except he wasn't arrested on the battlefield. He was arrested and placed under custody
and transferred. I think those are rules that come from a different era. There aren't insignias on every combatant anymore. They don't always confine themselves to nation-state boundaries. It's just an archaic way of looking at it.
There's also not a debate that sticks to the normal boundaries. Dominic, what do you think?
I couldn't agree more with what Scott just said. And to take it further, to bring him here to New York, I really believe is a mistake. As someone who's been to Guantanamo Bay, and I've been there before when it was used for Haitian refugees, that's the place where he really should be. When you bring him here, you got to understand, they, meaning it's alleged at this point, but the government believes he's a terrorist. When you bring him here, the media platform of the world is centered in New York. Yeah, exactly. So once he's here, they are winning already Because his message, whether we want it or not, whether the U.S. government wants it to or not, is going to reach throughout the entire world. And I agree with the Republican senator that made the point that once you bring him here, you are affording him the same rights as every American citizen. And that's ridiculous in my point.
Joe, what's your take, and what do you base that decision on? Is it security? Is it giving him rights? Is it broadcasting his message?
Look, for me, it's all about security. I think we, as Scott was saying, we're in a new age. I actually lost my brother-in-law September 11th. He's, my sister's husband, 13, 15, and 17-year-old children. So maybe I'm not particularly objective in this, but I think it's first and foremost about security. It's our first. Thank you. Well, it's the first attack on our soil since 1812, and we're in a very different kind of war, as Scott said. And we need to do everything we can to protect American citizens first, and worry about these combatants second.
Let me lay out some of the elements of what I think is the counter argument. And the first one is the effectiveness of the trials, because we do want to put these people on trial, whether it's in Gitmo or whether it's in federal court. And since 2001, according to Human Rights First, and I think we have these numbers available to show everybody, there have been 67 convictions in civil courtrooms of terror cases and 7 in military tribunals. The civil courtrooms are more effective at getting convictions, and there are plenty of people at Gitmo who we haven't been able to put on trial because we don't have enough evidence to convict them, and we don't know what to do with them. Is there, from a justice standpoint...
But that doesn't say that to me. That just says that they're trying them more in civilian courtrooms.
Okay, but that also, doesn't that mean that it's effective, that it works?
No, it just means that they're moving a lot slower at these military installations. That's all that says to me.
The other thing, Dominic makes a very good point, and that is the publicity. New York City is the media capital of the world. You can't give this guy a platform. It's much better.
That's what they want. That's
exactly
what they want.
You're making their case for him. He wants to turn it into a show.
But aren't we also at the center of this show as well? How we handle the prosecution or persecution of our enemies, isn't that just as important as that we confront them in the first place, that we give people a fair trial, that we lay out the evidence?
I guess that depends on what you think your public relations prerogatives are in a case like this. If you treat them like armed combatants and you send them to a military installation, you recognize that we're in a war, that's a life or death situation, it seems like you're recognizing the realities of the dynamic. If you treat them like you would treat a burglar or a common criminal, you're in denial of the dynamics that are in place for our nation. I think that's just a reality.
And if you're one of these alleged terrorists, would you want to go, put yourself in their shoes for a minute, would you want to go to Gitmo where no one is going to hear what you have to say for the most part, or would you rather go to New York where every single thing that you do is magnified times 1,000 for the world?
I understand that, but I guess my counter argument to that is I don't really care what they want out of this. What I want is the United States looking as good as it can look and presenting
is it looking as good as it can look?
Yes.
Or keeping us as safe as we can be?
Well, can't we do both at the same time?
I don't think we necessarily can. If we're talking...
I mean, in a civilian court, either way, this guy's in all likelihood going to get convicted. I mean, we wouldn't have...
Okay, but the moment you bring him here to New York again becomes a target. Right. The people of New York City have gone through enough.
But isn't New York always a target?
Well,
that's the thing.
As luck would have it, I was with Ray Kelly this morning. I was at a breakfast, and he, when you think of all the things he has to deal with, to add to his the security risk in New York City, as Dominic says, makes absolutely no sense. And that's exactly what you can do. You just focus the attacks. In fact, imagine what happened to the New York Federal Reserve. Imagine Ray Kelly's taken helped contribute to lowering the murder rate in New York City from 2,000 people per year to 400. One of these instances, one of these attacks, you could lose tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
I don't want to deny your deeper point that we're still involved in a fight over hearts and minds. But that's a different front. That's not a courtroom front. That deals with poverty issues and education issues that are in place in some of these nations that we can actually affect change in. There's a fight to be had over hearts and minds. I just don't think it's in how we treat prisoners who are on trial for killing Americans.
I think that's an incredibly valid point. I think that how we try our prisoners is a factor in all of this. And when it comes to the safety of New York City, we got Times Square at New Year's Eve every year. We have the United Nations I mean, there are always events that are going to put New York in the national spotlight.
But these people are the worst possible threat that any country, these are not people to play with.
So-
they have made it very clear what their intention is.
So I assume by extension we're all, all of you, are still okay with Guantanamo remaining up and running,
Absolutely, yep.
not moving those people to the United States and keeping the tribunal system.
Absolutely.
Of course.
All right, fair enough. And I guess from the sample just in this room, I think I understand why the debate seems to be tilting in the court of public opinion, though I still think it's an argument worth having and a fight worth fighting. We are going to ask you to keep this conversation going online. Head to Facebook and Twitter to sound off. Should bin Laden's son-in-law be tried in New York City? Apparently, I could use some extra people coming to my side of this. So if you want to say, Andrew, you're right, that would really get my attention. We're going to take a quick break here on RFL. When we come back, we turn to the issue of the sequester. After 1 week of living under the sequester, has it really been a week already? We're going to take stock of where we are and how negotiations on the overall budget front are going. Stay with us.